Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of another deception by holding back a peace memorandum. The US says that Putin should take a Ukraine peace deal, threatening to walk away from talks, as Russian officials say Ukrainian drones have damaged a hospital and homes in the Kursk region. Israel has signed off on a US proposal for a 60-day Gaza ceasefire, though Hamas say the deal does not meet their demands. The proposal would see Hamas hand over 10 living hostages and the bodies of 18 dead hostages in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners and a resumption of aid into the enclave. Meanwhile, Israel says it has intercepted another missile from Yemen's Houthi rebels, with air raid sirens heard across parts of the country. Elsewhere in the region, Lebanon's health ministry says 2 people have been killed in separate Israeli attacks despite a ceasefire. US President Donald Trump can keep collecting import tariffs after a federal appeals court granted the White House a temporary suspension of a court order blocking them. The US Court of International Trade had ruled that Trump overstepped his power with the sweeping tariffs. Meanwhile, a US federal judge has extended a temporary block on the Trump administration's attempt to bar international students from enrolling at Harvard. Billions in federal funding has been cut from Harvard amid an ongoing dispute between the Trump administration and the Ivy League college. Police say that 53-year-old Paul Doyle has been charged with 7 offences after 79 people were injured at a Liverpool Football Club trophy parade. Doyle faces 1 count of dangerous driving and 6 counts related to grievous bodily harm. He will appear in court today. French President Emmanuel Macron has met with Singapore's President Chan Mugatran during the final leg of his Southeast Asia tour. Macron is set to speak at the Shangri-La Defence Summit later, with several defence secretaries, including Pete Hegseth, also set to attend. Andrew and Tristan Tate will return to the UK to face 21 criminal charges once proceedings against them in Romania have concluded. According to their lawyers, the Crown prosecution has authorised charges including rape, actual bodily harm and human trafficking against the brothers. We start this hour in Europe. In the latest development, China has urged Russia and Ukraine to maintain peace talks momentum. Speaking at the UN, envoy Geng Shuang welcomed recent developments, including prisoner exchanges. He called for a political settlement, respect for humanitarian law and global support for dialogue. China says it remains committed to facilitating talks and seeking a lasting, balanced resolution to the conflict. Let's have a listen into those comments.
一，冲突当事方应该展现政治意愿，保持和谈势头，通过对话协商解决危机的根源性问题，达成一个公平、持久、有约束力，并被各当事方所接受的和平协议，最终实现政治解决。第二，冲突当事方应该切实遵守国际人道法，在任何情况下都避免袭击平民和民用基础设施。双方应共同努力，采取积极举措，推动战场局势早日降温。第三，国际社会，特别是重要的利益攸关方，应发出更多停火止战、劝和促谈的理性声音，为推动危机政治解决营造积极氛围，创造有利条件，提供。
Meanwhile, the US told the UN Security Council that its 30-day ceasefire plan in Ukraine is Russia's best possible outcome. Ukraine has already agreed to the terms. Russia, however, insists that certain conditions must be met first. Acting US Deputy Ambassador John Kelly warned that if Moscow continues the war, Washington may pull back from talks and impose new sanctions. Let's have a listen to John Kelly.
Trump has made clear we want to work with Russia, including on this peace initiative and an economic package. There is no military solution to this conflict. The deal on offer now is Russia's best possible outcome. President Putin should take the deal.
The UN's Rosemary DiCarlo says hope in Russia-Ukraine talks is just barely alive. Amid a surge of large-scale drone attacks, diplomatic efforts continue despite no ceasefire being agreed. Kyiv demands tougher pressure while Moscow denies stalling. The UN urges immediate ceasefire, stressing peace talks will take time but cannot wait. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron says the US faces a credibility test over its response to Russia's delay on a Ukraine ceasefire. Speaking in Singapore, he urged Washington to impose stronger sanctions if Moscow refuses peace. Macron said Europe is ready and hopes President Trump's frustration with Putin will lead to action. He will open the Shangri-La dialogue amid growing diplomatic pressure on Russia. Shall we listen to Emmanuel Macron?
Je ne crois pas que l'après-Kiev soit un problème de crédibilité pour les Européens. Je pense que c'est un test de crédibilité pour les Américains. Nous, Européens, depuis 3 ans, nous sommes constants. Nous sanctionnons la Russie, nous aidons l'Ukraine et nous ne voulons pas l'escalade conduisant à une nouvelle guerre.
In another development, Ukrainian drones struck Russia's Kursk region overnight, damaging a hospital and apartment buildings and injuring at least one person. Russia says the town of Kursk was targeted by a swarm of drones, with debris shattering windows at the city's main hospital. Meanwhile, across the border in Ukraine's Sumy region, fierce clashes continue. Authorities say several border villages have fallen under Russian control. Moscow has openly declared its intent to create a buffer zone in the area. In the east, Russia claims to have captured 3 more villages, including in Kharkiv and near Pokrovsk, a major target in its slow push westward. Ukraine has not confirmed these gains, but reports say over 50 attacks in the area have come over the past day. The front lines remain fluid, with both sides claiming control in different areas. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of deception for failing to deliver a peace memorandum ahead of possible talks in Istanbul. He claims no one, including the US or Turkey, has seen the document. Moscow says it's ready for talks, but Kyiv insists Russia is stalling with unrealistic demands. Trump and Turkish President Recep Erdogan still urge dialogue. The White House says President Trump, now in his 2nd term, is determined to end the war swiftly. Well, joining us to discuss the ongoing developments from the past few hours is Dr. Swasti Rao, who is a geopolitical expert and fellow at the Manekar Parakar Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis. Thank you very much, Swasti, for being here with us. Let's first look at these comments that we've had from the United Nations meeting. The US set their stall out, saying that Russia must agree to a ceasefire, or the US will potentially withdraw from talks. How significant is this threat, and do you think it will stand, given the rhetoric that we sometimes get from the US administration, which seems to sometimes contradicts itself?
Now, good afternoon, Joshua. Cutting a long story short, I do not have any expectation from the recent push towards peace talks. Please understand that there are internal dynamics that are fueling the direction in which the war is going. For President Putin, he has to show tangible results in form of those 3 to 4 years of grinding attrition that he has been undergoing. There is a war economy which is activated in Russia, and the entire economic output is completely centered around what is being produced for the war, and Russia has been cut off from sanctions, getting deepened with North Korea and China. So there are internal dynamics that are fueling this war, and as one can also see that Donald Trump's patience with President Putin has been running out, and he has said that if President Putin is not willing for the peace talks, then he's going to levy more sanctions and serious sanctions on Russia, which will have implications for other partners as well, including for India, because these are going to target the oil sales from Russia that we actually land up buying in huge quantities. So cutting a long story short, like I said, that I do not see any hope from the recent calls for any peace negotiations. sanctions, please understand that whatever can be referred to as a logical off-ramp does not exist right now. And on the contrary, the Russian side has been preparing for a summer counteroffensive. You already see that there's pressure mounting on the Sumy region. In fact, it doesn't mean much because they will still not be able to capture it fully unless they really change their, fighting tactics. But it would mean that Ukraine would have to then also, spread their already thin human resource from Donetsk all the way to Sumy. So I personally do not see this ending anytime soon, and I do not have any hopes from whatever UN or Turkey, etc., are mediating.
Yes, we're just playing some of the quotes from Emmanuel Macron. Of course, we heard his comments as well. He says the US faces a credibility test, and of course, the EU nations have called for US sanctions on Russia. They themselves, the European Union, have put countless, more than a dozen separate sanctions on to Russia. Do you think that this is something that the US could move towards if there isn't progress in the immediate term from Russia?
Yes, I mean, also if you go by sanctions and what you, if you read the statements of Tammy Bruce, who's State Department spokesperson, I mean, you can see that Donald Trump's, patience has been running out, and he eventually has realized that his appreciation of President Putin or his personal, friendship with President Putin is perhaps not going to be enough to really land a kind of a deal that will stay, because Donald Trump has negotiated certain very hurried ceasefires that have not lasted beyond 3 hours. So obviously, Donald Trump had oversimplified the situation in Eastern Europe. And I guess if you also look at the sanctions bill, which is co-authored by Senator Lindsey Graham, who, of course, is Trump's, one of his most prominent legislative allies. If you also see in the recent days, it continues to gather more support in the upper chamber. And this measure, I think whenever it is on the table, it would be very, very stringent. It would be about more than 500% tariffs on any country that buys Moscow's, like I said, oil and energy products. And this obviously would have implications for China and India, and especially for India, because India, unlike China, is not on the side of Russia, or in the war. India has taken a very neutral position. So I think this is something that we are observing very, very carefully. Of course, it is in everybody's interest that the war comes to, to an end. But currently, in terms of the internal dynamics, I do not really see anything going further. So coming again, just to connect to the threat of the sanctions, yes, I do believe that it probably will be managed a little bit better. It should be managed a little bit better from Russia's side. And I do see that President Putin will come again and give a few more assurances on ending the war or delaying the peace negotiations, like it happened recently when he was just going to sign for the peace negotiations. And then he said that first he would like to meet President Zelensky in Istanbul, and actually he never really landed in Istanbul. So you would see a bit of that dilly-dallying and delaying tactics from Russian side, because like I said, that for Russia, for President Putin, it is immensely important to give a tangible, positive result in terms of what can be labeled as a victory. And please remember that even after 3.5 years of intense fighting, the 4 annexed regions of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, none of these regions is actually won by Russia militarily 100%. So the situation on the ground is far more complex than what seems when people are trying to negotiate, these ceasefires in an oversimplified manner. Please also remember that even though Ukraine is going through a severe crisis, I would say, of manpower, but they have more than made up for the shortfall of ammunition through their innovative drone techniques. So long and short is that I do not see this war really ending, not at least in the 2025 or early 2026.
Yes, well, diplomatic efforts, of course, are ongoing to put pressure on a potential peace deal with those strikes. Also reported military action continuing. We will be across all of those developments. Dr. Swasti Rao, thank you ever so much for joining us today. Moving on now, French President Emmanuel Macron has warned that Europe may need to harden its collective position against Israel if it fails to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Let's again listen in to what he had to say.
Et donc la création d'un État palestinien consécutive à la libération des otages, à la démilitarisation du Hamas, à la non-participation du Hamas dans celui-ci, à la réforme de l'autorité palestinienne, mais d'un État palestinien qui reconnaîtra Israël, son droit à vivre en sécurité, et la création d'une architecture de sécurité dans toute la région, sont le seul aboutissement souhaitable pour la sécurité de tous, et le seul qui garantira la paix dans la région. Et donc c'est pas simplement un devoir moral, mais une exigence politique, et je crois aussi un vrai réalisme.
Well, as mentioned earlier, Macron's comments come as he's on a tour of Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, the White House has said Israel has accepted a new US-backed ceasefire proposal for Gaza. The plan was put forward by President Donald Trump and his Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. According to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, Israel signed off on the proposal before it was submitted to Hamas. Let's take a listen.
That Special Envoy Witkoff and the President submitted a ceasefire proposal to Hamas that Israel backed and supported. Israel signed off on this proposal before it was sent to Hamas. I can also confirm that those discussions are continuing, and we hope that a ceasefire in Gaza will take place so we can return all of the hostages home, and that's been a priority from this administration from the beginning. I won't comment further as we are in the midst.
However, reportedly Hamas has said that the group will reject the proposal as the latest terms fall short of its demands, including an end to the war, troop withdrawal and unrestricted aid access. The plan proposes a 60-day truce with a two-phase exchange of hostages and prisoners. According to Reuters, this would include the release of 125 Palestinians sentenced to life and 1,111 others detained after October the 7th, 2023. The agreement also includes the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza beginning immediately once Hamas signs the deal, and a halt to Israeli military operations with the start of the ceasefire. We stay in the region, and the United Nations has warned that Israel's decision to approve 22 new settlements in the West Bank pushes efforts towards a two-state solution in the wrong direction. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric reiterated calls for Israel to halt all settlement activity, describing it as a major obstacle to peace and development. The settlements were announced by hardline Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, despite warnings from allies threatening targeted sanctions. He said that the settlements will be located in the north of the territory. Britain, France and Canada have called the plan a direct threat to the viability of a future Palestinian state. We stay once again in the Middle East. Israel has said that it has intercepted a missile fired from Yemen after air raid sirens sounded across central Israel and explosions were heard over Jerusalem. The army confirmed the missile was shot down before reaching its target. Well, Yemen's Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility. Let's take a listen in.
نفذت القوة الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية عملية عسكرية استهدفت مطار اللد المسمى إسرائيليا مطار بن غوريون في منطقة يافا المحتلة، وذلك بصاروخ باليستي فرط صوتي، وقد حققت العملية هدفها بنجاح بفضل الله، وأجبرت ملايين الصهاينة المحتلين على الهروب إلى الملاجئ ووقف حركة الملاحة في المطار.
In a series of attacks launched by the Houthis since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. The Houthis have repeatedly targeted Israel over the war and for what they say is in solidarity with Palestinians living in Gaza. We head now to North America, and a federal appeals court has temporarily reinstated the most sweeping of President Donald Trump's tariffs just a day after a trade court ruled that Trump had exceeded his authority in imposing the duties and ordered an immediate block on them. President Trump lashed out at the Court of International Trade's ruling, calling it horrible. The White House slammed the court ruling and expressed confidence that it will prevail in an appeal. The The appeals court ruling preserves Trump's sweeping import duties on China and other key trading partners for now. Trump's trade advisor, Pete Navarro, spoke to reporters after the president won temporary reprieve. Let's have a listen in to Navarro's comments.
Look, the tariffs remain in place. The court told us, they didn't all but tell us, they told us, go do it another way. So you can assume that even if we lose, we will do it another way. And I can assure the American people that the Trump tariff agenda is alive, well, healthy, and will be implemented to protect you, to save your jobs and your factories, and to stop shipping foreign wealth, our wealth into foreign hands.
Meanwhile, on Fox News Channel's special report, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent commented on how America's trading partners continue to negotiate in good faith despite the court's rulings. Let's have a listen.
You know, we have not seen any of that in terms of our trading partners. They are coming to us in good faith and trying to complete the deals before the 90-day pause ends. So we've seen no change in their attitude in the past 48 hours.
And lastly, White House Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett said 3 trade deals are nearly complete and that more agreements are expected. Moving on, in a new development in the US-China trade war, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has acknowledged that talks with Beijing are a bit stalled, but expressed optimism that top-level diplomacy could break the deadlock. In an interview with Fox News, Bessent said more meetings with Chinese officials are expected in the coming weeks. He also suggested that a phone call between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping could help jumpstart the progress. His remarks follow a recent 90-day truce between the US and China reached after talks in Geneva. Under the May 12th deal, Washington dropped tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to just 30%, while Beijing lowered duties on US products from 125% down to 10%. Given the scale and complexity of the trade talks, Bessent emphasised that due to the complex nature of these talks, a breakthrough may require direct action from President Trump and President Xi. He pointed to their strong relationship and believes China will respond once Trump clarifies his stance. We stay in North America. A federal judge in Boston has extended an order blocking the Trump administration from stripping Harvard University's ability to enroll international students. The move comes amid escalating tensions between the White House and the prestigious Ivy League school. Judge Alison Burroughs said a preliminary injunction is necessary while legal proceedings continue. The case unfolded as Harvard celebrated commencement, with its president praising graduates from across the world. The administration has launched multiple actions against Harvard, including freezing billions of dollars in funding, investigating discrimination claims, and threatening to end its tax-exempt status. The Department of Homeland Security has accused Harvard of ties to violence, anti-Semitism, and Chinese influence, claims the university denies. Nearly 60% of students at Harvard's Kennedy School come from abroad. Meanwhile, Washington is also moving to revoke visas for Chinese students in key fields, sparking fears of a brain drain. Harvard calls the actions a direct attack on academic freedom. Staying once again in North America, US President Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that tech billionaire Elon Musk had resigned from his role as a special government employee. Following his exit, they are set to hold a joint press conference today at the White House. Musk's resignation brings an end to his 130-day stint at the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE, where he led efforts to cut costs across federal agencies. His departure follows his public criticism of Trump's proposed One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which Elon Musk claimed would undo the fiscal reforms he had championed while serving in the role. Despite the disagreement, Trump offered high praise for Elon Musk, calling him terrific and emphasizing that he would remain an integral part of the administration's broader mission. Well, as we've mentioned earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in Singapore for a two-day state visit to mark 60 years of diplomatic ties between the two nations. This visit is the final stop in his Southeast Asia tour, following trips to Vietnam and Indonesia. Macron will be welcomed with a ceremony at Parliament House and will meet Tharman Shanmugaratnam. He will also hold talks with Prime Minister Lawrence Wong to sign agreements on defence, AI, transport and legal cooperation. The two leaders aim to upgrade their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership focusing on digital economy and multifaceted cooperation. Macron will deliver a keynote at the IISS Shangri-La Dialogue, which is Asia's largest security forum. He is accompanied by senior French ministers and officials. 47 countries will take part in the 22nd Shangri-La Dialogue, focusing on security and defence. Previously, Macron secured major deals in Vietnam and Indonesia, including Airbus plane sales and military equipment agreements. Let's have a listen to the French President Emmanuel Macron.
A new phase, a new era of this relation with a stronger partnership, and we are very proud to be the first European countries to precisely have this level of partnership. But everything is about trust, and I think the trust we have is precisely the fruit of this very long history, but the fact that we have a very strong alignment our view regarding the global order, there's very strong alignment between our views regarding a possible future, and a strong alignment regarding our own interests, and from security issues, economic partnerships, from sustainable development and artificial intelligence, the spectrum of the cooperation we have, and clearly the magnitude of the ongoing partnerships is very impressive. So I'm extremely happy.
Moving back to North America now, Canada is grappling with a wave of wildfires that's forcing thousands to flee. In Manitoba, a state of emergency has been declared. Premier Wab Kinew says 17,000 people, including from the city of Flin Flon, must evacuate immediately. Soccer fields and community centres in Winnipeg will shelter the displaced. The military is deploying to help with transport. Kinew called this the largest evacuation in living memory. In Alberta, wildfires are sparking oil production halts. Cenovus Energy is scaling back operations at Foster Creek, while Aspen Leaf Energy has shut in about 4,000 barrels of daily output. Blazes near Chipewyan Lake and Swan Hills have forced more evacuations. Authorities say shifting winds could worsen the situation. Wildfires are now raging across central and western Canada, threatening homes, industry and lives. Well, that's all we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking news from across the world.